Here we are with Overwatch This. I'm Jeff from the Overwatch team.
Hello ladies and gents of YouTube, Rich from PCGamesN here, and I'm joined by Ben.
Hello.
And we're doing Overwatch This, episode 31 of Overwatch This.
Yeah.
It's been a long time, hasn't it?
It has. I don't think we've done
you and I
this before.
You and I have never done
And
Overwatch
yeah,
This.
It's been like over half a year now that we started doing this, and I've enjoyed every single one of them, and I'm going to enjoy this one even more, Rich.
Even more, because we're talking about Doomfist at some point today.
Yes.
But before we get on to that, new heroes. What news is there this week?
So that's pretty much the thing, is that the news this week is very light.
Right.
The anniversary is coming up. We're pretty sure that a bunch of stuff is going to happen. Talked about that in the last couple of episodes. Do check out episode 30 if you want to know all about that kind of stuff. There's been a bunch of kind of posts on the forums. Jeff Kaplan's been a bit more active than he's been the last couple of months, kind of going back to the launch area where he was posting kind of every day. He's talked about like a sitting emote for Sombra that people have been asking for ages, and a new legendary skin for Symmetra. There's a little bit of esports drama going on that you can kind of read about on the website to do with teams. I mean, you were writing about this morning.
Yeah.
Teams kind of dropping their Overwatch esports bits, and there was also some stuff to do with Blizzard kind of bringing in MLG, which they bought a while ago, and that's forming their esports division.
Fully consolidated within the company.
Which is very weird because they've now got that, and they have their normal esports division, and they have their Overwatch League division.
Yeah, it's clearly a sign of commitment to the Overwatch League. Yet another sign of Blizzard's commitment to the Overwatch League.
Yeah, and also like them kind of, it feels like it's, I don't know, not confused, but a little bit weird that they're doing all that at once. But there isn't a ton of news, so we're basically just going to speculate for this episode.
Cool. So, now that we've established that we're speculating, let's talk about Doomfist. Yeah. Obviously, we're assuming that he's going to be the next hero.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's kind of the only way you can really think it can happen. Like, as we talked about in the last couple of episodes, and again, I'm not going to spend too much time on Doomfist because we have talked about him quite a lot recently. It seems like he's going to be voiced by Terry Crews. I feel like at this point they would have denied it if that wasn't going to be the case.
Yeah, probably.
Like, either he wouldn't be next, or they would have denied it because, you know, they'll want to kind of get that out of the way before they announce, you know, who he is and have his voice, and then everyone hates his new voice actor, and all the rest of it. Yeah. So there's all the 4chan leaks and rumors. We talked about them on the last show. We've got stuff on the website about that as well. Please do have a look. So the question really is, who else could be after that, or could be coming next if they kind of swerve us again?
Well, it just makes sense as a thing to do for the anniversary event, right? I mean,
I think so.
With having been established in the launch trailer and everything.
Yeah.
So who else? The Spider. The Spider hero. Let's discuss that. What do we know about the Spider Lady?
So she's super, super weird. She's kind of my current favourite concept that I've seen. A lot of the art is very, very old for her. She's just really creepy.
I was going to say, creepy. Like,
yeah, and I think partly that comes from the fact that all the art we've seen from her is all quite old. It's from before Overwatch kind of had. It looks like it basically had some kind of makeover, possibly after that first 2 weeks of development that we've had an episode on before, where they decided that they wanted to be this super hopeful, this kind of cartoony, this, you know, very colourful world. And so all the art we have of her is from when it was a little grittier and a little less kind of, you know, friendly, I suppose. So that might be why she looks weird, but it's also a very unique concept now within the world. There isn't really anybody that looks like her, which is why I really, really like it. She's got these really weird wings on her that kind of expand out into these legs. She's huge as well, like in the bits of concept art we've seen.
Yeah, like she stands up really tall, right? Am I right in thinking there's the image of her walking across the battlefield against?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like Mercy is like flying like 3 times her height off the ground, and that's where she is like on this kind of like walking along on her legs with all these like swarm bots around below her. And what's interesting about that is that it's very possible that if she was added into the game, maybe she wouldn't actually be a character because she, you know, is too large to fit within that world. Like, I don't think, you know, they've got characters that are larger and characters that are smaller, May versus Reinhardt, for example, but I think they wouldn't want to put something that was that high a scale as a normal character. So were she to be added,
it would for sure be different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it would. I mean, it just wouldn't work with all sorts of stuff to do with map design, right? Like you can't get through a door. There's already weird stuff that happens when you like have a Reinhardt with a shield out getting through a normal door, and it just looks a bit strange. And you know, it can lead to some weird, not so much bugs, but like just kind of strange stuff going on there. So Yeah, it would be interesting to see her added, but I expect if she was in her original form, we would see her as like, I don't know, maybe some sort of like single player boss type thing if they go down that route with new concepts.
Or
yeah, exactly, yeah. Or she would get some kind of significant redesign, or she would only kind of expand out to be that big. Maybe when she used her ultimate or something, and she would like need to own. She could only do it in certain bits of the map because she just literally wouldn't fit.
That'd be cool.
Evidence for why she actually is going to be added, though, is like she has obviously had a lot of work put into her. She's appearing in multiple bits of art. I doubt they would want to bin all of that. So I think we definitely will see bits of her concept come forward, and some of the stuff we're about to talk about may actually be based on some of the stuff we've seen from her.
Okay.
But I really do hope so, just because I think she is very, very different from the rest of the cast. Even if they redesigned her to be, a little more hopeful, a little more colourful, I think if they kept the kind of very mean-looking and very dark and very kind of maybe get rid of some of the like bondage elements of her design, but kind of keep the very threatening look of like, oh, it's this giant kind of spider and this very weird looking wings. I think she could be a really cool addition.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't see that she's necessarily that incongruent with people like Reaper and Widowmaker. And like, the backstory to Widowmaker is really dark.
Yeah, and so is Reaper's if they ever get around to explaining it. Because it's clearly really messed up underneath all of what's going on there.
So there is room for that sort of thing within Overwatch, I think. But
yeah, definitely.
Anyway, let's move on. Britta and Ivon.
Yeah. So these are two of the characters that were mentioned in one of the 4chan leaks that we didn't really talk about so much in the last episode. Okay, they're 4chan leaks, right? We kind of had this discussion before. They are not the easiest to believe.
Right.
We're going to assume they're true, at least for the starting bit of this, just to kind of explain what's going on, and then we'll talk about a little bit, how believable they really are once we've done that. So Ivon is supposedly coming at the end of the year, and he has swarm bots as like a part of his kit. In fact, it's kind of the major part of what he's got going on. Basically, he will spawn. He's described as like a mix between Symmetra and Torbjorn, except the turrets move. So basically, you spawn these bots through various abilities, and then you control them through your other abilities, right? So maybe you tell them to go over there, you tell them to target heroes mainly. You say, oh, okay, go capture this point. Maybe they can do that, right? Obviously, we don't know a ton about this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but that is the general theme of his abilities according to this leak. The reason I find that to be quite believable is I can imagine that would be how they might have gone, okay, right, this spider character isn't working. The concept of her doesn't fit within the world anymore. However, we have this really cool idea for how this stuff works. Maybe they've done a bit of the tech work to make it work. A lot of that would have been like 3 years ago now, but that is how long it takes to develop that sort of technology for a game like this, I think. So, if that leak turns out to be true, I expect there to be some kind of connection there. So then there's Britta, who is like a kind of multi-May.
Right.
She puts up walls in like a bunch of different locations. She's very much about area denial. She can use those walls as part of her other abilities to. So the example given was her ultimate would create like an electrifying field between two of them.
Right.
So it's more about kind of controlling where people go rather than kind of dealing direct damage, which is part of May's kit.
Yeah.
But because she has like all the kind of freezing stuff going on, she can actually kind of do quite a lot in direct combat as well. So what's interesting about that, and one of the reasons I find it to be a little bit believable, is because they've been experimenting a lot with that in Heroes of the Storm. The last couple of characters, particularly characters like Probius, who creates these massive damaging fields that he puts down. But if you just don't go near them, he can't do a lot to you. And he controls areas by like, he's totally useless if he doesn't have a pylon near him. But he can create those quite easily and he can hide them. But if you blow them up, then he isn't doing anything. His right-click damage is very low. His health is very low.
Yeah.
He's very much about like tricking you or controlling you until your only option is to try and get him through where he wants you to be.
It's interesting you mention Heroes of the Storm because you talk about sort of the first guy in this little segment with his multi turrets.
Ivon,
yeah. And like that reminded me a little bit of the Voidlings for the character in League.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Malzahar. Yeah.
Malzahar, and the way that we've seen Overwatch characters implemented in Heroes of the Storm already, you'd think, or you might assume that because they're different games in different genres, they need big redesigns. But actually, Tracer's kit is quite similar.
Tracer is almost identical. Genji's very, very similar.
Yeah.
Diva, who they announced fairly recently, she's a little bit more different, but it is still very reminiscent. And yeah, I can imagine stuff now going the other way.
Yeah.
Particularly if those teams have been working closely together for the last, well, Tracer came out last year, so, the last couple of years they must have been, having quite a lot of back and forth, and obviously these teams are in the same building. There is a lot of people in the Blizzard Anaheim office, but, they definitely have communication between them. I think both of these are quite believable. There was like some vague descriptions of their art concepts as well that seemed, within the world, like stuff that you could imagine happening. Now, a lot of that stuff, like each individual bit of this, you're like, yeah, I could make that up. But all of it together is a bit more effort than I can see someone going to for like a one-time joke on 4chan. Oh, look, I made the internet think that this was going to be the next hero. The interesting thing about this is we actually get quite a lot of confirmation on this quite soon, because if all the stuff that they say about Doomfist is true, you can pretty much assume everything else they said was probably true as well.
Yeah.
Now maybe they, maybe they're red herrings, maybe it's stuff to put people trying to find them to fire them off. But as we saw with previous leaks, what happened with the Orisa leak was that they had the name wrong, the description wasn't like perfect. I personally think that leak wasn't as accurate as other people did, but they definitely knew something.
Yeah.
And then they were, working out from there. So while, if Doomfist turns out to either not be the next hero, which is what they're all saying, or isn't voiced by Terry Crews, which is what they're all saying, or is completely different from, what they've said he will be, then fine, all of this goes in the bin. But if he's even vaguely similar to what they've said, we can definitely look at this for clues as to who might be next.
They become a lot more plausible, don't they?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's new leaks. It's worth briefly touching on 3 heroes that we've covered in previous videos.
Yeah.
Leo, Athena, and another.
Another, yeah. So Liao, how it ends up being pronounced, is mentioned one time in one article on the Overwatch site. It was even before launch. It's when they're talking about a little bit of the history of Overwatch as in the organisation, and they say this was one of the founding people of it.
Yeah.
We know about all the others except for this guy. Don't know anything about him. He is presumed to appear in a video, which was the Anna Origins trailer, if I remember rightly, where he is assumed to be this kind of an Asian-looking guy on the left, and then there's a woman on the right with these big metal arms. People assume she will also be a character. Not really a lot of developments have happened there. The only thing that really has is like people thought that maybe she was Sombra for a while, just because she was a female character that we had seen before. That turned out to not be true.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at those characters, it's very different from the Spider, because the Spider, all the art we've seen, all the kind of hints we've seen towards that, were all pre-launch. Like, back in 2014 was when the art was made. Kaplan used some of the art in one of his talks, but obviously, he's just using art that he has access to. And, when he's talking specifically about the development of the game, he's going to use art from back then anyway. However, these characters were shown when, after the game had come out, when they probably already decided, a bunch of stuff that's happened since launch, stuff like the comic being cancelled, for example. So, like, these are definitely part of the new canon that will actually turn out to, actually be the story of the game. Finally, there's Athena. We talked about this a lot before. This is the idea that the administrator character that gives all your all the talk over what you're doing will actually become a character herself, just because people are interested in it. The thing about this that is interesting is that, again, in the DICE talk, but with a piece of art that people haven't seen before, the character that people think she is showed up as a silhouette. There's this kind of slender omnic robot.
The robot thing.
Yeah, that we've seen, again, in like a load of different concept art going all the way back to 2014.
Yeah.
But again, she showed up in a piece of art people hadn't seen before, that Kaplan had clearly made specifically for that talk, right in the centre. It really felt like a hint.
A hint.
Yeah, and this is where I think people could maybe be surprised, is because she would also be a very, very good character to be the anniversary character, right? Like, here's this character you've had with you throughout the course of the game's existence. Now she's real, and now you can play her. And it would be a great swerve, I think. I think that is the one way in which they could surprise people without really pissing them off. Obviously, maybe I'm overplaying that slightly, where it's like people aren't going to get angry about a new Overwatch character. They're just going to go mad like they do every other time.
Yeah.
But that would definitely be similar to Doomfist, a very nice way of kind of celebrating the anniversary while making the character that they're making relevant to that as a piece of story.
Fair enough. So either Athena or Doomfist then.
Or someone else entirely.
Or someone else entirely. Plenty more in the article that joins this video. In the meantime, thanks very much for watching as always, and we'll see you next time.